Hello and welcome to episode 5 of PolitiBabble of season 5, and it did remind us of a band called 5 We just definitely didn't Google this, but there is a band called 5 We thought it could make some better intro music, but we decided let's stick with the good old classics. So this week we are asking, are we being lied to? As usual, I'm Archibald Elliott, and I'm joined by my superb co-host
Oliver Sykes.
Yes, and also if you didn't spot last week's episode, it was out not on the video, but on it was out as an audio podcast, and it was not last week's, 2 weeks ago. Crikey, time does fly when you're not podcasting. It is quite shocking. But yes, it's on maxradio.com/podcast/PolitiBabble, and it's all about cancel culture. I think that we did actually get cancelled in the studio about 4 times by tech issues, which wasn't too helpful.
I think you then got cancelled later on for the next week or so, Archie, didn't you?
Oh, cancelled? No. Cancelled me is never 2 words that go together. I don't believe it exists. We're being lied to by the media that cancel culture exists. So yes, it is. This week we are asking, are we being lied to? This can encompass a variety of topics, and who really are we being lied to? Are you lying to me? Is the government lying to me? Is the media lying to me? Or even is Oliver lying to me? Who really does know? Is this all just one big lie? So we're going to be addressing a wide range of topics, varying from the fake news to government corruption to even government-controlled media. So it's quite the jam-packed week, Oliver, isn't it?
Absolutely, and of course we'll be looking also into our Isle of Man current affairs and as well as UK current affairs, which are, as always, so interesting, especially in the UK and the Isle of Man at the moment. I mean, it's just fascinating.
And we can see if Oliver does meet his bet from quite a few weeks ago. I won't mention the bet because then he'll lose it automatically. But yes, it is.
It's not to do with my pay, guys. So.
No.
Although that is still being discussed.
So yeah, we start out this week with the topic of fake news. It's been in the news a lot. Probably, I think it became most prevalent at least in our recent memory for millennials, or Gen Z as they like to call us, with Donald Trump's election campaign in 2016, where it was all about that fake news. So could you give us maybe a bit of info about what fake news you've heard about, Oliver?
Well, I'm
proposed fake news, I suppose.
I'm trying to think back to anything. I mean, I've heard a lot of discussion about it all, especially during Donald Trump's time in presidency. He particularly was going on about the media company. I think. Was it Fox News?
Oh no, he liked Fox.
Fox News. It was
CNN. Yeah.
And CNN. I remember him at press conferences, going at them saying, I'm not going to take any questions from you because I believe what you provide as news content is fake news.
It was just quite like Howard Quayle towards Max Radio at the end of his premiership, I think.
Well, I mean, sometimes usually, people say something's fake news because it's something they don't want to hear, because it's usually the truth. But then, what is the truth sometimes,
I know. Well, yeah, I think it is quite interesting how it was portrayed, kind of like these media companies like CNN, or kind of the media which would disagree with him, he portray as fake news. But there are obviously big cases of fake news anyway, and that really confuses us all, because we get both this heckling almost from leadership and lead political figures that something was fake, and then we get the insistence from bias and from broadcasters and fact checkers that was in fact real. So we're having this kind of discussion. Also, we have, I think there was a brilliant case. Nothing's a brilliant case about fake news, just to be clear there. But when like a minister has a speech, or like Donald Trump gives a speech, or Joe Biden gives a speech on the election campaign, they would go in and fact checkers would go and check all their facts. And that was kind of stopping the fake news on the election trail.
I suppose another interesting one sort of recently was with sort of Harry and Meghan and what was really gone on to be said, because there was 2 sides to a story, and we still don't sort of know what was said behind closed doors. But obviously, I was going to say something then, but I thought that's part of my mission this week, so I won't go on to talk about that topic.
Well, yeah, but we did see fake. The interesting thing is fake news and us kind of being lied to isn't a recent problem. It's occurred since ancient times. We look at an example from about 13th century BC, where like Ramesses the Great would spread lies and propaganda portraying the Battle of Kadesh really as a stunning victory for the Egyptians, when in fact it was kind of the other way around. And it was between the Egyptians and the Hittites, and actually the battle was in fact a stalemate, but he portrayed it as kind of this great victory to kind of encompass that. And then we saw it move on to maybe like in the early modern period, we saw obviously the invention of the printing press. And that was really quite a revolution in the way fake news could be published. So we saw, I think, I watched an interesting lecture on Venetian fake news and kind of because all the diplomats were based in Venice at that time, obviously with like Veneva. So was it like they're all based in Venice at that time, like the Venetian kind of court and that, and they would publish a book and they'd publish it as if it was published in England, but it wasn't actually published in England, and the kind of fake stuff to make people believe it was from a certain place when it wasn't from a certain place. And then we see up into maybe the 20th century, we see a lot in that in the war times. We saw fake news as propaganda. And that's a really good case of the government purporting this idea of fake news and about are we being basically lying to the public to kind of boost their morale. And yes, that does have ethical dilemmas, but I think we'll come on to that later. But we'd have maybe if we look at Nazi Germany, we'd have like they had a propaganda minister Goebbels, and he would obviously use broadcast journalism to promote their agendas and say what we're doing is on the right side of history, and these kind of that brainwashing of the public, and especially into 20 years into now, we've really seen it arise and become almost a buzzword in our country. So I think the internet has just allowed it to really, really spread because anything can be published and no one can really censor it. We even see deep fakes now being created, which almost fake videos. Well, they're almost fake videos. They do fake videos. So it's quite fascinating. But we did actually see, even on Donald Trump's campaign, he was all against fake news and how the media was portraying him as badly. But there was a lot of pro-Trump fake news stories being shared at the same time.
It's like I say, it's usually what people don't want to hear most of the time when it comes to fake news. Obviously, some of it is not true, but it is interesting. Obviously, you've seen the likes of climate change denial and sort of Facebook is probably the biggest platform where fake news is spread because you can make things look official when they're not. I'm trying to think of an Isle of Man example of any sort of fake news that's sort of gone on.
I will say I'm struggling to think of something which isn't satire, and clearly satire. So there's a difference between someone pretending something's real and being satirical. There's a big difference there. But there was an interesting study done from Princeton University and the University of Exeter, and it was about consumption of fake news during 2016 presidential campaign, and it actually found that conservative voters, so Trump supporters, over 60, were more likely to consume fake news than Clinton supporters. And they'll consume not fake news about the Trump campaign, well, it was fake news about the Trump campaign, persuading to vote for Trump. So really, this idea of fake news is on the opposite end of the spectrum. He's trying to portray himself as this underdog, but really it was his side that was pushing it and kind of pushing this propaganda. Both sides pushed it, but that's the modern age we live in. Yes, but Isle of Man wise, yes. I can't think of any specific examples. There probably is many, but we're part of the secret establishment who are purporting that the Isle of Man fake news doesn't exist. not real. Yes. But it does move us nicely on to kind of the issue of government corruption. And does government purport these fake news stories? So do you have anything to say on that, Oliver?
Not particularly, no.
Oliver doesn't want to bat a bullet in the back of his head, it appears. Yeah.
I mean, of recently, at the moment, it's very apparent that the Tory party is probably quite corrupt. I mean, Boris is been denying it, hasn't he?
I wouldn't say it was corrupt. No,
you wouldn't.
No,
but it's the way that the polls are indicating at the moment. It's really taking a turn for the worse for the Conservative Party.
But again, I do like to say the polls are ridiculous because the polls showed Theresa May winning the 2017 election. She called it a snap election, and then it switched.
But the polls have been very fair in the Conservatives' way for the past few months. They've shown Keir as being, you know...
It doesn't necessarily reflect that of the voting intention of the country accurately. It does to a degree, and it's a straw poll.
Well,
really.
You know, maybe the polls are lying to us. Who
knows? Or maybe we even look at social media, and we look at the role of social media. Amongst this corruption, we see lots of parcel squares being shared, giving that the government's doing this, the government's doing that, we need to vote these Tories out. And we see it in comment sections galore. We see it on Twitter, etc., etc. And that's kind of proportioning the story that they are corrupt. But then you look at it and we see even tabloids are purporting this. We see the case of, like, let's say, Geoffrey Cox, the former Attorney General. And he was doing legal work for the British Virgin Islands in a corruption case. And yes, he did work in the Caribbean for 5 weeks. And he did then vote by proxy or vote virtually in the UK Parliament. But people were digging into it. It blows up stories that they want to hide. So really, we look at this... we can go back to the example of... yes, it's a satirical program, Yes Minister, but basically they want news like this to come out, and they want to push this news so they can slip other stuff under the carpet. And we see that even with the thick of it, they really like these really heavy news stories, focusing on what they want to focus on.
Well, former Conservative Prime Minister John Major has criticised Boris Johnson over the past weekend, calling the Johnson government perhaps politically corrupt. He said there's a general whiff of we are the masters now about their behaviour, which he has described as damaging to the country and its reputation overseas.
I think there must a clear case to be discussed there on the fact of political corruption, because it's not quite the same as them being corrupted by crony figures. It's more they feel we have the power, we're going to use it. And I suppose it's only a moral standing of which way you want to conduct politics.
I suppose so. But it was very interesting yesterday in PMQs with Sir Keir Starmer.
Oh, yes. And Sir Keir Starmer misconduct, as Boris called it.
Yeah.
Did you see? It was interesting, that part. Boris was giving an answer and saying, Keir's not answering any questions about his misconduct. And then it talked about his misconduct a lot. And then the speaker interjected and asked him to withdraw the word misconduct if that's what he heard. He would stand corrected if that wasn't what he heard. And then Boris was saying, no, Mr. Speaker, I didn't say like misconduct. I said misconduct, and that's exactly what the right honourable gentleman opposite was doing. It's kind of twisting their way to paint.
So you don't. So, what are your current thoughts on how the Tory party's offered their top donors seats in the House of Lords? Do you think that's right?
Well, no, I think there's a clear distinction here. That they offered their party treasurers a seat in the House of Lords for the service their party treasurers had done to the country. That was the scandal which was going up. And yes, those party treasurers may have donated about 3 million to the party. That we don't know really what was done, but they did have a contribution to politics. And it's clear to note that it wasn't all of them which were elevated that didn't speak at all in the Lords. It was only some of them, and they do have valuable experience, I think, to give to the Parliament if they choose to. But equally, they're not getting paid if they don't turn up to the Lords and don't vote. And I think it's important to note that there are many people in the Lords. I don't think they're any less worthy than others, apart from the hereditary peers who should inherit those positions. And then they've done good service to the country in different ways.
Fair enough.
What are your views on them?
Well, I was just reading an interesting article, and they said, that they are sort of business people. They contribute a lot to charity and other such things. But just because they've donated a lot of money. Should they get a hereditary peer in the House of Commons?
Oh, it's not hereditary peers, they'll get a life peerage.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes. Only 92 hereditary peers since Tony Blair decided to wreck the system.
Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't say wreck the system.
I say wreck the system.
Well, that's up for discussion. Probably it's another point.
Yes.
Talking about the House of Lords. Have we discussed this prior?
I can't remember. I think I'll be lying to you, Oliver. I said I knew.
Well.
No link intended there.
Oh, I'd never know these days. Anyway, what's truth? Anyway,
but yeah,
but that could be up for discussion.
Yeah.
Talking more about House of Lords.
Well, it does appear it did appear at least about 6 months ago in some parcel squares I saw on stores, or infographics as they like to call them on social media, which leads quite nicely into that. So yeah, we see a lot of these posts being shared. I'm sure you've come across it. Do any of recent memory come to mind? Parcel Square campaigns. Not Youth Vote IM. That's the only reputable one.
Oh.
But Parcel Square campaigns.
Recent? How recent are we talking?
Past 17 years.
I'm trying to think.
Oliver's been too brainwashed to
no,
tell the difference between
I can, but there's been so many, Archie. What's there been with? What's been going on in China with the sort of like the camps that they've got there? I've definitely seen one regarding that. There's been countless.
Well, there's been some on I think issues relating to kind of women's rights, etc., and spiking
LGBTQ.
And there's when it's really interesting when you challenge them on these issues. And police shootings is a great one.
Yes.
And they say this man has committed no crime, he should not be put in jail, etc., etc. And then you read the story, and it comes from a heavily biased source, and it doesn't actually have any fact basis behind it. And you think, yes, but a jury has found him guilty. A jury has been persuaded beyond reasonable doubt that he's been found guilty. The appeals failed, and yet they're still pushing for him to just be let go. And I find that quite an interesting state, because then they put a petition in the bottom saying, sign this petition for the XYZ, but people don't go and read it and think, actually, should I be signing something ridiculous which says a man who murdered 5 people should just go away and get away with it because he was black, so it must have been institutional racism. Sort of that is what at least I've seen quite a lot on people's stories.
I mean, it ranges from climate change to sort of what was going on with China, and obviously most recently it's sort of been the spikings across in the UK. I don't know what the most recent sort of Pastel Square chain.
Well, it's died down slightly in the past 2 weeks, I think.
The one thing that I do see is share this photo, and for every photo you share, we'll give
plant
you
a
one
tree.
There's things like that, and like save the endangered rhinos if you share.
And
this
it doesn't
post.
actually do that. And people
I've always thought this is not true.
We're being lied to. And if we look at the online harms bill, it gives the government more power to regulate social media to ensure they fact check this stuff, which I think is slightly dangerous. Interestingly, even though I've complained so much here about fake news, but we do have the freedom to speak in this country. We do have the freedom to say what we want to say, and when we limit someone from saying something which ultimately has no harm apart from persuading people for a fake cause, we also do risk, if we regulate that, if another party comes into power or more radical people come into power, that they then use that to shut down opinions they don't agree with, and that's dangerous.
That's
because
concerning.
They treat fact as opinion. So they will suddenly say, if I say I don't believe the gender pay gap is such a big issue, or I don't believe it exists, and then I'm suddenly prosecuted for sexism or something. Or I say I don't believe that trans women are women, and then I'll be shot at for that. So there's those sorts of opinions, or even saying I don't believe that BLM is a good cause. Opinions like that would then start to be possibly shut down because it's imposing this government restriction on our lives. And it's also, if the government's lying to us about certain stuff, as is perfectly possible, we would have no idea. Are we then to trust them to regulate us? Are we then to trust them to say to us what's right and wrong if they're not telling us what's the truth.
That's certainly true. I mean, social media companies now tend to put little labels under things, don't they, regarding certain topics.
Any particular ones come to mind?
No. You'll find out soon enough if you're to our listeners.
I'm sure there's a particular tag that goes under most of these posts. It starts with the word C. If it's if a word beginning with C and the two numbers 19 are at the end, a certain tag tends to appear under the post. You couldn't happen to name it, could you, Oliver?
No, hopefully you won't name it either. Otherwise, we'll ruin the game.
Oh, no fun. Well, I'm sure you can guess what we're getting at. But we see. Have you come across RT?
RT,
the Russian state-owned media.
No, I haven't.
Russian
funny
television.
enough,
Because they're on Instagram, interestingly, and they post very. It's hilarious to see because you'd think it was some sort of either left wing or just neutral news media because it doesn't talk about Russia at all. It talks about and criticises all Western countries, and then when you click on it, it has the label underneath every single post: Russian state-owned media, and you think they're purporting stories. And it's not necessarily the facts there. The facts are correct in the long-form posts to a degree. But the headlines are just like the Daily Mail. They're so inflammatory and they're so clickbait almost to make you like the post and think, oh, it's utterly ridiculous they're doing this. Oh, it's utterly ridiculous they're saying that. Then this person said this. Ridiculous. What are we doing? And they kind of post on this. People post on stories, at least on the people. If you disagree with government, the best place to get a fun infographics from the Russian state-owned media. It's quite entertaining. But yeah. What do you think of government-controlled media?
I don't think it's a good thing. I think that that people should really be able to.
Or government-owned. Sorry, not government-controlled. Government-owned media.
I still don't think it's. I still don't think it's the greatest thing ever.
What do you think about the BBC?
I think the BBC's for the most part okay. I think when it's
government-owned.
Yeah. To
a degree, it's technically it's publicly owned.
I think if it's sort of something that's at arm's length, it's okay. But when it's close and attached to the government, I don't think it's particularly good. But you're a fan of the BBC, aren't you, Archie?
Yes, I quite like the BBC. I don't see anything wrong with a state-owned media.
Do you have a preference to any sort of media outlets?
I like the BBC. I like the FT. I like the Times. I like the Telegraph. I dislike the Guardian. I dislike is it the Mirror? Yeah, I don't like those two. But I don't have necessarily a problem with the BBC, government-owned media, as long as there's other media available in the country.
No, definitely.
I think government-owned media is at least a way of ensuring if the government's run democratically or as democratically as can be, such as the UK or in Australia with ABC, that allows for independent journalism which isn't swayed by must make money, must have commercial interests, must portray it in a certain way to make people buy our papers. Mm-hmm. It's produced without that worry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, yeah.
Mm. Yes, but state-owned media is interesting. What media do you favour, Oliver?
Sorry?
What media do you favour?
Well, I quite like The Guardian. And I suppose the BBC. I'm trying to think of anything else that I might consume. Sometimes in the morning I might
Daily Star?
No. Sometimes in the morning I might watch Good Morning Britain. I
went off there ever since Piers Morgan left.
Ever since Piers has left, I've not been so keen. But you'll never guess who was on there the other morning. Former Labour Minister Ed Balls.
He was on there?
He was on as the co-host to Susanna Reid, former BBC news breakfast presenter. If you don't know, Ed Balls was a former politician who served as the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer for the Labour Party.
But I must say, I'm not necessarily a fan of ITV. They have ads, so I don't like them.
Yeah, I mean, in the morning, it's all right if you're watching it.
If Piers is on there, I watch it.
I mean, if you're watching it between like 7 o'clock and 7, right as the news is going on, and then it's not too bad. Yeah. But later on, I mean, it's not good when it comes to watching films because you get to the great part and it comes off and it's like, oh,
I know.
That's why you watch everything on record or on
Netflix. Solve it.
Yeah, I mean other.
GB News. I forgot to mention that one.
GB
That's another
News. Well, I watched that as it formed. I watched it as it first came out, and then ever since I thought
I watched the odd
clip.
Great. I watched the odd few clips. I Nigel Farage is on it, so
LBC. LBC.
Talk radio as well.
Yeah, LBC.
Remember, you can grow concrete, Oliver.
Yeah. Absolutely, LBC. I quite like them.
LBC,
as well. Yeah.
Nick Ferrari.
Excellent. I listened to their recently purchased Amazon little Echo thing for the government to listen on me, of course.
Oh yes.
That's
why people get vaccine, obviously.
Yeah, and I asked for the news flash, as it's called, and Nick Ferrari pops up. So I enjoy that. I think I have an option between that. Oh, Sky News. Sky News. I'm
waiting for you to mention that because I remember you always bang on about it.
I do like a bit of Sky News. Yes, Sky News. I don't know why Sky News didn't come to the forefront of my brain, but yeah, I like Sky News as well. I think they're quite a trusted source. I think they are I think they're one of the most trusted news sources in the UK actually.
Prefer the BBC. I trust the FT most. Oh, well, as they said in Yes Minister, the Times is. Oh, well, I've forgotten it. Westminster. Well, you go on with who's the most trusted. Awkward silence, I must say. It's
Indeed.
Excellent on podcasting.
It's certainly not.
Excellent.
I'll put in UK's most trusted news source.
UK's most trusted news source. But anyway, in the meantime, I'll move on to the Yes Minister. Yes Minister quote on the papers. So we have obviously this
the Yes Minister
Jim Hacker, who's a minister, says, "Don't tell me about the press. I know exactly who reads the papers." And I think this is actually very, very accurate and aptly put. The Daily Mirror is read by people who think they run the country. The Guardian is read by people who think they ought to run the country. The Times is read by the people who actually do run the country. The Daily Mail is read by the wives of the people who run the country. Financial Times is read by the people who own the country.
I think I've heard
the
you
Morning
say this
Star
before.
is read by people who think the country ought to be run by another country. And the Daily Telegraph is for those who think it is. I won't go into the Sun. We won't have any profanity on this show.
This is
yes, it's a rather apt quote, I think, from Series 2, Episode 4. I do recommend Yes Minister. It's rather good. Good satire.
Here we go. Have a little article here by the Press Gazette. The future of the media is their little slogan at the bottom there. And an article which was published on June the 23rd, 2021.
Out of date.
Well, it's
if I disagree with it, if I agree with it, it's in date.
If it's most recent sort of thing I can find, it was right at the top. Anyway. Trust in UK news media boosted since pandemic, but still lower than EU referendum. Now they've got a few stats here which I want to draw up, and it ranks the BBC News as the most trusted, so I was actually wrong. It actually ranks Sky News in 5th position, just ahead of the Guardian.
Well, who was first? Sorry, I forgot.
So BBC.
See, yes,
with
I win the bet.
Yes. And they actually have the highest percentage of people. Oh no, it's the Daily Mail. No, the Sun and the Daily Mail who have the least amount of trust.
It should be the Morning Star there. The communist
BBC
paper.
News, followed by ITV News, followed by Channel 4, then the Financial Times, and then Sky, Guardian, the Times, regional local newspaper.
So Oliver, what was that about Sky being the most trusted in the country?
I thought they were.
Anyway,
that must have been an out of date source, I have to say.
Anyway, we don't actually have anything from the listeners this week because they're lying to us. As everyone is, we don't trust social media anymore, so we don't actually believe it was the listeners writing in, but rather the social media companies. So yes, we can no longer trust the desk of our listeners. If you want to send it in, do send it in code, and if you see us in person, we can give you the code, and if not, What a shame. But yes, listen, Desk of Our Listeners might be back next week. At some point, yes, it should be. So yeah, we can swiftly move on, I think, away from Are We Being Lied To? Sue, we get to lie to you in the media section of our newscast.
Well, now is time for the Isle of Man current affairs roundup of the week, or the past 2 weeks, we must say. So, first of all, South MHKs once again dominate Keys questions. Professor Curran is impressed with the Isle of Man COVID... oh, no, Archie, I've just said the word. I know.
He failed!
I wasn't even meant to say COVID, I was meant to say climate. Anyway, Professor Curran impressed with IOM climate response. A first draft of the island plan has been published. As well as this, we have... where am I looking for? It's probably run out of time now. Gas extraction in Manx waters, a no-no, says chair of the Isle of Man.
It's a no-no. Blah, blah, blah to the gas extraction.
And Tynwald accepts independent review of COVID-19. Now I don't care. I'll just keep saying COVID.
And you forgot to mention there, Oliver, Archie getting berated on social media comments.
And of course, you've got to get that in.
We'll talk about that
for
later.
all our favourite listeners.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll be delighted to hear about this, if Archie wants to discuss or not. I bet the jingle music probably stopped about 5 minutes ago, didn't it?
Oliver, the jingle music was never playing.
Oh, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Oh, phew. Well,
but Oliver has no idea.
You're not lying to me, are you?
I don't know. I guess, Oliver, you'll never know if the jingle music was playing or it wasn't playing. It's a bit like Schrodinger's box. The cat is dead or the cat is alive, and it's both at the same time. So yeah, what was the first story on our news there?
Well, it was that South MHKs are dominating Keys questions.
Not surprising with Jason Morehouse, the man asking the questions.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure at the moment, but department-wise, I don't think he got a departmental position. I think he sits on the Economic Policy and Review Committee alongside June Watterson as chair, Tanya August Hansen as MLC, as well as I think Claire Christian. I don't know what else he's actually a part of. I think he might be vice chair of something, but as well as Tim Glover, I think he's a departmental member for the Department of Infrastructure.
Yes.
But that's about it. So they are asking a lot of questions, indeed. Which, Jason's sort of carrying on from where he left off in a way. He's always got plenty of questions to ask. I'm trying to find where my last news article was.
Oliver, I fear, has lost the plot. Oliver's supposed to be lying to them here, so go on.
Island Plan. So the Island Plan first draft has been launched.
Oh yes.
A lot of people said, "Oh, that's just a little plan with a dash of photographs of the island."
It looked better than some MHK's manifestos.
It did. It definitely did. And it's a first plan, and they've said, we've not done it completely in depth because we know we're going to listen to Tynwald members. We're going to take their concerns, and we're going to, I think they're bringing it for debate in the November Tynwald, which I think's next week, and then the plan will actually go for hopefully full approval in January Tynwald. But that's exciting. A sort of silly question here, could be a schoolboy sort of error, but it's completely separate to the programme for government, isn't it? This island plan.
No, it is basically the plan for government. They're the same thing.
They've just sort of changed the name, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's because Alf Cannon quite likes his island plans, his COVID plans, his climate change plans. He likes plans. Plans galore. Maybe he should become an architect, and then he'll have many, many plans.
Programme for government sounds like,
But I think
it sounds less of a plan. It sounds more of a mission.
I prefer plans. It's good to have plans for government, and then we have plans for the island, and then we can at least it says it's more of a structure rather than a program. A program can either say, this is what we're going to do over the next few years, but it's not really saying, we're doing this. It's here. It's now. We're going to act forward. So it's a bit more forceful, maybe, in that respect.
Anywho, I'm not sure that we've actually talked about this on the programme before, but I think it was interesting. It was certainly a highlighted issue throughout coming up to the Isle of Man general election, was the extraction of gas just off the coast of the island.
Well, on Man and Line the other day, they had, which is one of the Island's current affair call-in shows.
Yes.
They had the CEO of Kroger on.
Mm-hmm. And you called in, didn't you?
I did call in, indeed, yes. He was purporting that renewable energies won't make any revenue for government, which is quite ridiculous, because they still will make money from renewable energies, they make money from gas. And I think Kroger's set to make about £4 billion from the gas extraction. If it contains about 10 million pounds worth of gas, they'll make about £4 billion from. So, billion, that is, with a B, not an M.
A B.
Wow. So, but you think about it, and he's the CEO of a company, so he obviously he'll have some sort of, you have financial gain from this. And he was on for an hour, basically saying, yes, we should extract it. No, there's no reason why we shouldn't. It's a transition fuel. Let's be using our fuel. Because he knows Kroger, at least from my understanding, Kroger, their only project really is Isle of Man gas. Their only product is extracting that gas. They have backers, and if they don't do it, they've lost money. They would have lost money.
One of the people is former member of Tynwald, former MHK, Chris Robertshaw.
He had investments.
He came out after he left Isle of Man politics sort of as a career and stepped back. He did say, I'm pretty sure it was on a...
No, it was on. It was registered on his interests.
Oh, he did say he did declare. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
No, you have to. It's illegal otherwise.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's quite interesting. I think. I don't think it should go ahead. I don't think it's necessarily good for the island. Setting a precedent on our global scale. I think we need to care about our PR, care about our appearance. Keeping up the appearances. I think that's actually the name of another sitcom.
I think it would look good. I think in one way it would look good though if we were to use the money from the extraction to fund.
But we can fund our green transition adequately without the need to extract. We are the 5th richest nation per capita in the world. We have plenty of revenue streams. We have government waste which can be cut. We have roads which seem to be being paid to fix, but not actually fixing.
Yeah, I mean,
we see waste.
There seems to be a lot of money, dashing about, but it's actually.
So we can spend this money on a green transition. I think it is fair.
The one thing that does annoy me is there is so much money, but yet we don't get anything out of it.
Well, we see this. The state of my road when I drive down is quite frankly ridiculous.
Well, the state of all the roads are probably quite ridiculous.
Yeah, I hit a. There's some the road I now have to drive every day. I drive 2 of them, and there's giant pothole covering half of it.
Well, Archie,
so, yeah.
I've got an idea for you. Mm-hmm. Maybe, next election you run, you say I'm gonna take on Department of Infrastructure. Then you can do what a former minister's done and get the road done by his house.
Yes, that's an excellent idea.
Oh, your plan's sorted. You don't need it.
No, I just pay. I just slip him a couple of thousand in consultancy fees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, off it goes. But yeah, it's quite shocking the state of the roads at the moment. I think that does need to be addressed. We're sounding like old people here. Oh, the state of these roads here wasn't like this when I was younger. No.
Yeah, well, funny enough, the question has just. Has been asked, it was going to be asked, at this month's Tynwald sitting by
Jason Morehouse?
Stu Peters.
Oh, yes, of course.
And he's going to be asking how much money is being spent, or how much money is
he's already asked.
Has he already asked?
Yes, and the Infrastructure Minister gave a reply, which is quite funny, considering I think it would be better put to the Treasury Minister, who actually controls finance. I can't remember the answer, I didn't watch it, but he has asked.
So does that mean this month's Tynwald sitting's already happened?
From memory, yes.
Oh, I thought it was next week.
Oliver,
that's me.
Oliver, you've been lied to.
Oh, it just goes on and on and on. Should we leave this week's current affairs there and move on to UK news, or is there anything else you want to touch
UK
upon?
news. Well, obviously we've had the whole ridiculous scenario over MP's second jobs, so I think we've discussed this already, so we can leave it there. But yes, HS2 rail extension to Leeds has been scrapped. What do you think of HS2, Oliver?
I feel like it's been talked about and nothing's been done. If something got actually started, I think I'd probably be quite impressed by it. But I think it's just a bit of a token sort of idea, really. It's just No,
work has already started on the first section of HS2, linking London and the West Midlands. But the irony, the big irony of this is, I'm pro HS2, but I'm not pro it taking till, I think, was it 2029 to 33 to reach Birmingham from London. I think that's rather ridiculous.
How long is it going to take from 8? If you were to go on HS2,
I think it shares like 40 minutes off or something. I don't know. I can't. I think it shares about 40 minutes off your journey time.
I mean, I just think.
But I think it's my ridicularity is the time it takes. I didn't know if we're China, we could build that in a year, 2 years, 3 years probably. You could build the whole rail network because we'd have the manpower. You'd have the manpower. You put the work in.
Oh well, why have HS2 Archie when you can have Douglas Promenade?
I know, the Isle of Man's HS2,
connecting you from
one
the
end
sea
to the
terminal
other through roundels.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. I've not thought about this. Oh, they don't. I thought, where did the trams go when it comes to the roundels? But they're on the other side.
Yeah.
Oh.
It is rather.
It's getting
confusing.
to that point of the week.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Well, I think this is that kind of does wrap up this week. I've not so heavy on the UK current affairs at the moment. There's a lot going on,
I wonder why that would be.
But not so much.
Is it not going in your favour, Archie?
Not very, very much interesting. I'd say.
What a shame.
So it does end this week. I think next week we may have an interesting topic lined up. I know we'll be discussing China's influence on the world at some point.
Hopefully. Yes.
So there will be an interesting topic, and we'll get our desk to the listeners.
Yes.
To you.
We've also hopefully coming up. We'd like to at some point discuss a bit about devolution, and also, like we said in today's program, House of Lords. But if you have a burning topic that you'd really like discussing, fairly soon, we'd be more than happy to discuss that topic. And if you'd like to be a guest, we'd more than happy have you here in the studio discussing with us, or even if you want to tell us about a topic, we're more than happy to have you come in and listen there. This is what PolitiBabble is all about.
Yes, well, that rounds up another week, season 5, episode 5. We do hope you've enjoyed, and as usual, you can listen back to the previous podcast issues. Last one was Cancel Culture at manxradio.com/podcast/PolitiBabble. That is manxradio.com/podcast/PolitiBabble. Yes, that is all for this week. We do hope you've enjoyed.
You've been PolitiBabbled.